Hey everyone, and welcome to my favorite day crafts. So this video is going to be another part for my tutorial series on how I do my 8x8 mini albums. So in the first part I already uploaded on this series, I talked about how I like to prepare for my mini albums and also which tools I like to use. So if you haven't seen it yet, you can go check it out if you like to. And yeah, so today, as you can read by the title, it's about album covers. So I want to show you how I like to do my album cover. So you will need two chipboard pieces of 8.5 by 9.5, and then you also need a chipboard piece for the spine, which is 3 by 8.5 inches. And then you also need two pieces of heavyweight cardstock in the size 12 by 10 inches and then 12.5 inches by 10 inches as well. For my album cover, I like to use the same cardstock I also use for all my pages and all my basic construction. And I like to get my regular cardstock in the colors black, ivory, and craft. And I also like to get them in larger sizes. So for my regular cardstock, it's always in the size A3, which is 11.5, I think, by 16.5 inches. But in case you only have cardstock in 12 by 12 inches, that should be fine as well. You just need to change the measurements for this album cover slightly. So instead of doing an album cover in 8.5 by 9.5 inches, you would do your album cover in 8.5 by 8.5. So for all the measurements, I will write them down in the info box below. And I will also put a recommendation on the 8.5 by 8.5 option for the cover. So, and it's totally fine because we will use pages in 8 by 8 inches. So the cover is still a little bit larger and that works as well. I just like to have it a little bit wider because I use a ribbon closure and sometimes I also add some insets with tabs, and these tabs are hanging from the side, so I like to have it just a little bit wider and give it a little bit room. And because our pages are just going to be 8 by 8 inches, it's totally fine to have the cover a little bit smaller as well. So yeah, I just like to have it a little bit wider, but that's totally up to you. And it also depends on the size of cardstock you have in your stash. Okay, so for the first step, we just need our cardstock. We don't need our chipboard yet. So I lay down my cardstock and I place my cardstock pieces next to each other so that on the left side we have the 10 by 12 inch paper, and on the right side we have the 10 by 12.5 inch paper. So the 12 and the 12.5 inch sides are now on the bottom. Now I get my score tape and I just place it on the left cardstock on the right side. So this covers basically the 1/2 inches difference of size between the two cardstock pieces, and that's where we can attach the second piece to the first piece. So to cut off the tape which is hanging from the edges of the cardstock, I just get my small scissors by Tim Holtz and then I cut it clean and lay it back down on the table. Now I have to remove the tape, and I always like to remove it just from one side and just a little bit. And then I position my paper or whatever I want to glue down, and once I have it in the right position and it's all straight, I then go ahead, press the paper down and remove the rest of the tape. And if you don't want to use tape or you just like to use wet glue instead, I would probably do a pencil line just 1/2 inch from the right side and this leaves you with a straight line as well, so that you can then attach the two pieces together. So now that we have our cardstock attached to each other, we can now get our chipboard pieces. And as I said in my first video where I showed you all my different tools, I really like to use this ruler set by Craftily Basics. They are just perfect to do your album covers. So as you can see here, I have this L-shaped ruler, which I just placed on the left side of the cardstock. And to glue the chipboard down, I like to use a wet glue instead of tape now, because this way I can just reposition it. It doesn't dry so quickly, so I can hold my ruler in place and I can still move around the ruler and the chipboard when I place it down on the cardstock. I also like to move the ruler to the top and the right side of the chipboard so that I can make sure that there's the same distance on each side. Now I get my second chipboard piece, which is the binding piece, and I also use another tool of the ruler set, and this is a T-shaped ruler tool, which gives you the perfect gap between the two chipboard pieces. And you would really need to have a gap between, because that's where you will fold your album cover later on. So you need a little bit space in between. If you don't have this ruler set, I would recommend just maybe place some tape in between. I see people do this, or just make sure that you have like this small gap in between the pieces. So for the second chipboard piece, I just used my wet glue again, and then I burnished everything down with a bone folder, with my large bone folder. And then you can just remove the tool and place it to the right side. And the set includes also this smaller tool, which is just like without a T shape or an L shape, just as a space holder between the first two pieces. And then you can go ahead and glue down your last piece for the cover next to the T shape again. And after gluing it down, I got my L-shaped ruler again to make sure that there's an even distance on every side of the chipboard. But as you can see, it was slightly off, and that's basically because I forgot to check it with my ruler when I did the binding piece, so the middle piece of the chipboard. And because the glue was already dry, I wasn't able to reposition the chipboard piece and the piece on the right side. So, but that's also fine. I mean, later on we will still cover the wrapping, so with another piece of cardstock, so it won't matter if the edges are not perfectly straight. And if you don't have this ruler set, I would again suggest to measure the space between the chipboard pieces and the edge of the cardstock, and then mark it with a pencil so that you have an even space on each side of the cardstock as well. So after gluing everything down, I then turn around the whole construction to use my bone folder and burnish down the chipboard from each side. And now we have to get our score tape and place it on each side around the chipboard pieces. Burnish down your tape as well so that you can make sure that it sticks very well to the cardstock. And then I get another tool which was also included in the tool set, and this tool is designed to do the edges. So this leaves you the perfect edge to wrap around your cardstock. So as you can see, you just use the tool and place it on the edge. And it also leaves a little gap between the corner of the chipboard and the edge you just marked. Because if you mark it too close to the corner won't be fully wrapped, so it will still be showing. So if you don't have a tool like this, also just make sure that you leave a little bit of space next to the corners. So after marking all the corners, just get your scissors and cut them off. What I now like to do is to fold up the cardstock on the edges and then get your bone folder and burnish it down around the chipboard edges. So this leaves you a nice clean edge, and it's kind of pre-fold before you stick it down. And I do this on all sides, so I turn around the construction and I just fold up the cardstock and burnish it down on every side. So now you're ready to remove the tape, and I like to do the bottom tape first. So I just remove it and then I start to fold it up from the middle. So I start at the spine piece, I use my bone folder again, and then I just burnish it to the right and the left side. And because the skirt tape is very strong, it immediately sticks to the chipboard and it holds very well. So you just need to burnish it down, and then you can start with the next side. So I like to do the top side, so the other long side as well. I just remove my tape again and then I do the same step. And before I stick down the shorter sides, I get my bone folder again, and then you have to just fold the corners in a little bit. So as I said, there is a little bit of space, and because you don't want them to be very like pointy, you just fold them inwards. And because I placed my tape before I cut off the edges, I now have tape all the way to the corners, so that when I use my bone folder now to tuck in the little corner pieces, it sticks to the tape as well. So now after tucking in all the corners, you can go ahead and stick down the smaller sides to the chipboard as well. So now you're basically done with your album cover, and the next thing you would want to do is to attach the hinge to the middle of the cover as well. But how to attach the hinge to the album cover and how to cover up the insides will be part of another video in which I actually want to show you how I like to do my hinges. So yeah, that's it for the video today. I really hope that you enjoyed watching it and that you could follow along on how I do my album covers. I just noticed that sometimes I really struggle on how to explain things in English, as it's not my first language. So if you have any more questions, feel free to leave them in the comment box down below. And if you have any other feedback, I would of course also be happy to read it in the comments as well. And yeah, that's it for today's video. Thank you for watching and see you in my next video. Bye!